Hey everybody, you're listening to What Are You Doing in Denmark, the podcast that helps you make Denmark make sense. My name is Derek Hartman, and in today's episode, we're bringing together candidates from across different parties to talk about the issues shaping their municipalities in advance of Denmark's local elections on the 18th of November. We'll be talking about the roles that internationals play in the story of their municipalities, what you need to know about in advance of the elections, and some of the issues facing their municipalities and yours. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. If we can maybe go around the table and just introduce yourself and a little bit about your party and where you're coming from.
My name is Heidi Wang. I am a member of the Venstre party, the Liberal Party, and I have been a local politician at Copenhagen City Council for 6 terms, 24 years.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, all right. I didn't know that, Heidi. 6 terms.
Yeah, it is. I even received, a medal from the Queen.
Congratulations.
Okay, wow.
I'm so proud.
Of course. Great. Well, thank you for inviting me and for inviting us. My name is Asbjørn Reissman, and I am from the Social Democratic Party. It's the first time that I run as a candidate, so my medal is far out in the horizon. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to speak to some internationals about local Danish politics.
Yeah, my name is Joanne Bywater, and I'm running for Liberal Alliance, which is also a liberal party. This is the second time I'm running for elections, and I'm super thrilled to be here, so thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you all for your time and for sharing, giving us internationals a little bit of the knowledge that we may have some gaps on in advance of the elections. One question that I have is maybe why it's important for international residents to participate in elections. I think sometimes people aren't aware of their status and their ability to vote, and some may be thinking, this isn't really for me. Things work well. I don't want to interfere with things. I'll just sit this one out. Why is that maybe the wrong choice? And why should internationals get a little more involved? Yes,
Well,
right?
because it's also their capital. I mean, we are formed also by internationals. It's a vast part of a population, and it gives a city a sort of vivacity. It gives us, I guess, more energy. It brings more life to the city. And I do think, and also a lot of tax money. So when you pay tax, you have rights, and you should think about those rights. So how do you want your school to be for your children? What kind of sports stadiums would you like? How do you see the library should, be in the future? All of those things, they're also, something you have the right to have an opinion about. So definitely go and vote. But a lot of people don't know they can vote.
Yeah, I'll just completely second what Joanne just said. Like, if you live in the city, it's also your city. Yeah. And when I work at a quite international workplace called Unomondo, I think that the Danish workers are actually the minority at that company. So we have a lot of Italians, a lot of Spanish people, a lot of Germans. And they go out, they use the city, they eat at restaurants, they can also have a decision on should we be able to eat outside and to what extent, for how long can we serve alcohol. Like those minor topics, they may seem minor, but it's something that impacts everyday life, whether you live here or just enjoys the city for all its cultural aspects. So I think that for the same reasons that people from Copenhagen, like myself, should vote, internationals should as well.
And I'm glad you mentioned, too, who can vote. That's a good thing to bring up. But, of course, that would be anybody who is a Danish citizen, anybody who is an EU citizen, so your colleagues from Germany, Spain, Italy, of course, and elsewhere in the EU, anybody from the UK, anybody from the other Nordic countries, and then anybody who is outside of those countries but has called Denmark home for at least 4 years is eligible to vote and should, because so many decisions are made on the local level.
True. I think you should vote because your everyday should function. For instance, if you own a car, right? And then all of a sudden we have a lawmaker candidate. She's going to run and she's going to take away 20,000 parking. And you need the car, because you live at the center of the city. And then you're going across the border, from Copenhagen to other cities. And then she says, no, when you come back, you don't have a place to park. And that is not good. And then because they take away the parking lot, that kills the boutique. It make it like hell for, single mom with 2 small children because they need it. Craftsmen, carpenters, electricians, and also the welfare providers. They take care of the elderly. They cannot find parking space. So if you want to have, you don't have to run around and drive around to find a parking lot, then you should vote for those parties that are for parking. So it's a very concrete example how you can exert your influence through the ballots.
So I know that is a big issue, especially in Copenhagen for the upcoming election. When it comes to some of these key issues, I know, of course, parking and parking spaces are one. But what are some of the other issues that you think are most important or that we should be thinking about?
Well, it is also some of my specific interests, but I think schools are very important at this election. We have some schools in Copenhagen which have been subjected to a lot of violence. There are a lot of unhappy children and teachers who go to work every day, and we need to sort out those problems so that every child gets a good education, which we were normally used to. We were known for here in Denmark to have a really good educational system, but we have 10% of children who can't read when they come out of the schools. So this is one of our huge tasks. We need to be able to support the schools. It's a foundation for the rest of the life of these children. So that's one of the topics I find very important. But I also find it very important that we find out how we can live together in a more harmonious way here in Copenhagen, because we've seen a steep rise in anti-Semitism. And I know a lot of people feel very threatened and insecure and are already moving out of our city. And I want to emphasize that all people should have a right to be here, no matter what the religion is. So we need to combat anti-Semitism. We need to make sure that the Jewish population feels safe. And this is also their city. So that's 2 of the major topics that I find very prudent, very important for this election.
Well, I agree completely that the public school system is something that we should look into. Myself, I'm a product of the public school system, right until actually it wasn't good enough, or my parents didn't think it was good enough, so I moved to a private school when I was in the 9th grade, due to the fact that the level actually decreased.
Yeah.
So the public schools, for improving them with the current financial setup that we have, because a lot of solution is throw more money at it. We cannot do that with every topic. But within the current frame that we have, I say that the public schools should have a bit more power to decide how to counter the difficulties that is at that specific school. So make it a bit more independent, you can say. Instead of running the schools from the city council house, say to each school, all right, you have a lot of students with, let's say, multilingual. Then you can conduct yourself or make that an issue that you can address in the way that fits your school the best. Mm-hmm. So more independent schools. The other one that I would like to emphasize on in this campaign is the association life. I don't know, foreningsliv in Danish. I don't know how it directly translates. But all the new areas that we have built, Sydhavnen, Teglholmen, they have been built without considering, maybe we also need a football pitch or an indoor hall or something where children can actually gather and play some sports and learn how to develop instead of only developing behind the screens or down in the kindergartens or whatnot. So association life, public house, public schools, and then finally the major one, which I think everyone around this table knows of, the housing market and the prices. I think maybe we will touch upon that later on. Yeah. So I'll keep it for these 2 for now.
I think we all know the baby boom generation, and we are retiring. But the next generation is not so many. So what I worry the most is the welfare provider. We need teachers. We need people who take care of the elderly. We need a service provider. You can see if you go to Zara, they have a lot of, Spaniards who speak English and people from Sweden. I think it's going to be worse if we don't find a solution. I actually made a proposal at City Council because I was contacted by a group of Thai and Filipino nurses. They had their credentials at home, but they're not giving any chances. So what happened in the end was not to use the state money, SU, and take a new education. It takes years and years. So what is important is that get a chance for an internship and prove whether you can or you cannot. So what I did was we went to the budget for next year, and then my party, we sort of fight very hard. So now there's money for this group of people. And the difference between them and people coming, as international is that they're actually here, they're married to Danes. So I think why should foreign minister and education minister go abroad and try to recruit nurses? We have them here, so it doesn't make sense. So that's one of the issues that I am most concerned. Another one is very difficult. It put us in moral dilemma. For instance, I can see the special education takes, a lot of the budget. So at one point already now, it goes over the ordinary education, if I may call that. You don't know why all of a sudden we have so many children that have, problems, psychological problems. So a lot of money are used at that area. And whenever you have ADHD children, you put them in special school. So there is a very alarming statistics that says that 65% of these children that went to special school, they came out without jobs. And then there's high percentage of these children ever went to special schools, they got handicap pension. So that's a very alarming situation that I would like to work with.
Important to also mention, yes, so when it comes to mental health and healthcare, of course, that will be decided with the regional elections that are also taking place and how the workforce is shaped when it comes from all kinds of education is something that at the municipal level will be decided. Now, you mentioned internationals, of course, and one thing that does come up a lot is internationals in the circumstance that you described, where they're already living here, but perhaps because of their credentials or the type of visa that they're on, they are maybe overlooked. And then there are efforts to recruit people from abroad to come here to work when they perhaps have the talent already here, just because the person is international. That's something that we hear a lot. Is that something that you think more can be done on the municipal level that could help with integrating those internationals into the workforce that perhaps are here as trailing spouses or are here because they've reunited with a Danish partner?
If you look at the structure of the industry in Denmark, we have 75% of the companies that belong to the small and medium ones. The median are 75 employees. So if you talk about Novo Nordisk and Maersk, their concern, their corporate language is English. So everybody's welcome, it's easy, but you only have 25 of those, big company that could really, make use of this vast pool of talents. But these 75% of medium and small, they're not used to foreigners. So Danes don't like to speak English when you are the only one. People think you should adapt. Why should I speak English? So I see that as one handicap here.
I'm sorry, but I disagree a little bit also because I've been working in very small Danish companies for majority of my adult life, small design companies. And we've always spoken English actually and had a very mixed sort of and a very international environment actually. It wasn't until recent years that I started speaking Danish at work at all. So I do feel, at least in the more creative businesses, there are a lot of internationals. I do agree that some Danes might be a little bit afraid or want internationals to speak Danish, and it'll come. Most people that move here, they learn Danish by and by. And for others, it doesn't really matter because they're only in international circles or in an international workplace and can get by with English, which I actually don't have a problem with at all. I mean, we're the capital again, so there should be room for many different people. But I do think we can do a lot with information. I do believe that a lot of internationals might not know where to get the information, how to get into the job market and so on. So we should definitely look into that because we do need a work talent and workforce from abroad. That's just how the cookie crumbles. So I think it is our responsibility here in Copenhagen to actually facilitate that, make it easier, inform, make campaigns so that people know how to go about that, how to enter the workforce.
I completely agree. Also, I used to work at law firms before. I used to work as a lawyer, the most conservative business you can ever get into.
Yeah.
So, and even at the law firm that I worked at before I joined Unomondo, we took some of the Ukrainians that had a legal candidate that came due to the invasion from Russia, of course. And they were able to work because a lot of the working language, even at law firms where we have Danish legislation, we still work with international clients. Also, there are so many internationals working in our service industry. I cannot remember when I was last served by someone who didn't speak English. I think there are plenty of options. So what the municipality should do is make a one-stop shop, you could say, like a one point of entry, whereas Joanne says, the international coming as a spouse who maybe have been employed by Novo and then they get a expat apartment in the new Teilholmen, handed to them by Novo, and you're not really part of anything unless you do a big effort yourself. But if the municipality actually, or maybe made a sort of cooperation with Novo, said, if you bring in a spouse, if you bring in the children, if you bring in someone who would like to work, please contact this number. That's it. And then the municipality can actually have this little initiative that was aimed at someone who came as part of someone who was employed by one of the larger companies that Heidi mentions.
We have International Citizen Day that the city government runs, and we invite all the companies, and then we have talent bank. I just think that we should do it more often, maybe 4 times a year instead of once a year. That'll make a difference. What you said, I totally agree. Small companies, especially like gaming company where Denmark is very famous. So you really have international talents, but try in Jutland, with a small company, then it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And also because of network. I mean, international do not have that network as Danes have. But a lot of people thought that the network comes from Danes. It's not true. I'm Asian, the Chinese, Filipino, Thai, we take good care of each other. So you go to somebody who has a job, and through that, they'll help you to find a job. So I think each community, they have a natural sort of mechanism. I don't know about other group, but within the Asian community, we do help each other.
So, of course, jobs are one of the big issues in the municipal level. What are some of the other issues that stand out to you? And I'm also curious how these local issues sort of connect to the national issues, whether they're from your party's stance or just in general, what our listeners might miss when they see the headlines from Christiansborg compared to the decisions that are made at the local level here.
I think the distinction to be the most aware of is what can be done with the current legislation and what needs new legislation. Because there are so many promises being made in this campaign by my own party as well, by other parties, by Heidi's party, by all parties, that requires new laws. Right. And laws can only be passed by Christiansborg. So you have to make that distinction, and that is difficult even for a Dane, because what are you then supposed to know every law in this country? No, of course not. But be aware that if something is related to taxes or something is related to the municipality owning property and renting it out, that is something that requires new legislation and a change of law, and it can only happen through Christiansborg. So that's one part to be really aware of. To answer your question directly, like the connection between the municipality level and the national level, I think some of the problems on the current housing market with the inflated prices and whatnot it's due to we don't tax profit when you sell real estate. And I think this is also to create some disagreement between maybe Heidi and I. I believe that whatever profit that you have made only by being you, meaning it's society-created profit and not profit you have created by your own merits, by your own effort, I think we should tax the first and not the latter. So profit made on heritage or profit made on real estate, especially if it's real estate that you got from your parents because you're from Hellerup, and they could buy you something called a forældrekøb, then I think the profit on that should be taxed, and maybe then we can actually agree on lowering the taxes on work income.
Interesting, because real estate
that was national level. That is not something we can do now, but I think that ties into the inflated housing prices in Copenhagen, because if you can sell your apartment on Østerbro with a 2 million tax-free profit, you can turn that into the next apartment and next apartment. Suddenly you have a financial caste system almost, where only those in the real estate market can be in the real estate market. And that closes it off for everyone else.
And that's one of the only tax-free investments that you can make.
Yes, we have something in this country that we don't tax. That's
right,
also amazing to people sometimes, but yeah.
But I can see how that would cause other repercussions across society in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, being a liberal, I still believe of, free market. If you look at the composition of, the market now for housing, I mean, we only have 25% of the housing are private owned. So if we don't build more private housing or private apartments and villas and that, the housing will be unaffordable and even worse in the future. And of course, another thing is that about taxes, my party and other parties, we make sure that the municipality taxes in Copenhagen is now the lowest across the country.
Isn't Vejle lower?
No,
we have
it's
overcome Vejle.
Yes.
Overtaken Vejle. So
yes.
Overcome.
It's entertaining.
So I think Danes, I mean, it's a good thing in Denmark that as long as you have a job, you can actually go to the bank and have a loan and buy the property. But the problem is when you have so few private-owned housings, the price will just rock to the sky, and it's getting worse and worse all the time. So what we do is that we create more housings that could be sold. For instance, why shouldn't we build higher? I mean, why should we always have these lower, the
5-story?
Yes, 5-story or, 12. I understand, and I think it's a great thing that we preserve the middle-aged town. Within 5 kilometers from the city center, actually our clock, that it shouldn't be, you cannot build anything that's higher than the tower, at a city hall. So what we do is that if it's away from the center, we can actually build higher. Maybe we can build tighter. Maybe, there are so many creative ways to create more private housing. And I think your party and Red and Green Party, they were trying to build more public housing. It just doesn't fit into Danes culture. That is, I want to live there where I can own. So I think unless, we come with a liberal solution, we will stick to all these social democratic and communist solution to the housing, and we're not going anywhere. And so it's,
Yeah, I mean, of course, here we have a disagreement, but that is completely fair. I think that Heidi is maybe a bit too optimistic on what the powers of the free market can actually achieve. I don't think that we have seen the free market work when it comes to the housing market. So I believe that if we are to ensure a proper welfare level in this city, where we can have a kindergarten teacher living, where we can have a police officer living, where we can have someone who works at a hospital living, who has salaries that are maybe a bit above the median, but not much more. And the median in Denmark is, I think it's 300,000 annually. So it's not that much. So if Heidi's plan with the free market and just build, all privately owned property, well, that will take, to my gut feeling, around 30, 40 years to achieve that level of actual supply that can fulfill the demand that people have. So in order to secure welfare level right here, right now, because we are actually living in the city right here, right now, so we cannot wait for 30 to 40 years, we need more what is called common housing, almene boliger. Common housing is where you have a lower rate that you have to pay. It's not private, private rental. It's more like a common rental. So we need more of that type of housing to secure that we can actually fulfill our social contract with those that pays the taxes in the city. Because why would you pay your tax if you're not feeling you're getting anything from it? If you can see that the public school is going to hell because there is no public school teachers that can live in the city, and why would a public school teacher live in Næstved and then commute 1 hour to Copenhagen to teach public schools when they also have public schools in Næstved? So in order to have a welfare level we can actually be offering people, we need the welfare personnel to be able to live in the city.
I can understand that. It seems like a lot of the housing that is being developed is either in the high-end real estate level, which is not like, say, some of the new developments in Nordhavn, for example, which are not necessarily something that's affordable for somebody at some of the salary levels that we discussed, a teacher, somebody working in the fire protection, things like that, may not be able to afford to buy one of those houses unless they're maybe gifted some kind of in down payment from a family member or something like that.
Find a spouse who is going to bear a lot of money.
However, if it's only sort of that high-end housing and social housing, it almost seems like what's missing is something in that middle level. I understand some of the projects, like Nordhavn, for example, need to be funded by the developers funding that project through selling these housing units. However, it seems like what's missing is sort of that affordable housing in the middle. How would the city do that, especially when there's areas that have been slated for development for quite a while now, in the Oslo area, in Vesthammer, that are still being studied or debated over, but there hasn't been any groundbreaking on new housing there?
I think if you want to have, your own housing, your own apartment worth more in the market, you should vote for Social Democrat. If you want your houses even more expensive, you can make more money, then you should vote for Red and Green in his list. Because when you build the public housing so many, that means the privately owned housing become more and more expensive for the teachers. Because when you have a salary, you go have a loan, then you get tax deduction. And Danes have that, kind of a culture, number one. Number two, it doesn't really, for instance, a lot of people use this Nordhavn as example, rich people. The thing is, they are Danes, they're overseas Danes. They come home and invest. That's why I think the government should look into that. Another thing is that we have an experiment. That is, we turn ghetto into housing that's affordable. That means, in Tingbjerg, we have a project. It's actually NPV, that's a huge developer. They came up with an idea because nobody wants to move into Tingbjerg, So we encourage teachers and people with middle range salary to move in for 2 million. But you are not allowed to sell it for a profit within 4 years or 6 years, I can't remember. So that's one good thing. I remember Rebjergo, that's a very famous politician. She's gone now, I love her. And
Social Democrat.
Yes, and she promised, 5,000 new apartments with a rent for 5,000. It never worked. I can tell you, I've been there for 6 terms, 24 years. We used the same recipe. We built more and more public housing, and then our private housing, raised, rock high. So I think maybe we should try some new recipe, and that is something I think me and Simon have to work out when we both sit at a city council. It's just maybe he has his recipe and I have mine.
Just a quick remark, and then we the tax deduction thing. The thing that you can deduct in your taxes, that's the interest rates. So it's not the loan that you are actually paying out; it's the interest on the loan that you get, and that is deductible.
Right.
I think to find some middle ground between Heidi and I am not against building new. I'm not against building, not at all. Just really to stress that out. I think we should buy more private property because I agree with Heidi. Most people would like to own that, but we should combine it with the housing type that I talked about before, the common housing. What we should avoid, it's what it's called private rental, you can say. The housing owned or the housing buildings owned by either the pension funds or the capital funds. The reason why we have so many of those is because we had to sell the grounds, the building grounds, to the highest price possible to afford the expenses for the metro. Now that we have a metro, now that Copenhagen is actually a really rich city, once we started this back in the early 2000s, Copenhagen was on the verge of bankruptcy. I know it sounds odd now looking at the city, but the financial state of the city has changed 180 degrees, right? So now we are at a place where I agree with Heidi, we should change the recipe. We should change the way that we think about city development and not just think we need to sell to the highest bidder. No. We need to sell to the bidder that can develop the things that we need in the city. Because the highest bidder is not as valuable anymore as it was before.
Another thing is that, 12% of our citizens living in Copenhagen are singles. And then we have another 12%, people are from the baby boom generation. And I think we all have a life, circus. When you're younger with small children, you live in a villa. And then when you get older, you tend to move, right? And then I think there is no reason why one single elderly live in an apartment for 95 square meters. That's one thing. Another thing is that 25% of our, citizens are ethnic minorities. Why will we have a rule that says that you can only leave the country for half a year? Otherwise, you're going to lose your pension, or otherwise you're going to lose this and that. A lot of the elderly, they want to go home. Find a middle ground and let them go home, and then you have, you release a lot of apartments.
Oh, the housing pressure.
So I think we need creative ideas and look at the composition of our citizens now in the city, and then use that life circle to find out how we dispose these available housing.
Yeah, so I like the idea to some extent, but we should also just acknowledge the fact that housing economy and people living in housing is different than everything else because there are emotions to it. There are emotions to where you live. You have maybe seen your children grow up. Like my dad lives in a larger house, a bit outside of the city. He still lives there. Both me and my siblings, we have moved out a long time ago. But now he has his biking route, he has his routines, he has everything. And that is where the forces of the free market and the invisible hand of Adam Smith meets its failure in the meeting with actual real life. So I like the idea. I don't think it's doable, but I'm all for, again, once we get in, Heidi and I, both of us, unison, find the creative solutions because we can agree on that it is a problem that needs to be addressed.
And that's a great thing about the way that the municipal councils work is that it does force you to find a common solution, find that common ground where positions overlap. And
right now, there's another problem we're trying to address, that is Airbnb. A lot of people use their own, apartment to really profit from that. And I think there is agreement across the parties that we should address that.
Yeah. To avoid becoming Barcelona.
Right? Yeah.
Hey, it is a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It is a pressure on the city.
Yeah.
And we should build some more. So we can agree on siding towards Enhedslisten. Because they refuse to build anywhere all the time. Never build anything in their life. Because there is some sort of, maybe not, little bird that will be losing and then have to move. So they would rather have houses for the animal than for the human.
Yeah, it's definitely a nuanced, a nuanced issue, but one with no easy solution.
Not at all.
I think that is going to be, as we have population pressure on the city, as more people are moving here. I think this what happens with housing is really going to be a big issue coming up.
It's not only in Denmark. I mean, it's all over the world. I mean, I felt ashamed because I'm from the baby boom generation. I'm sitting with a good apartment, really huge.
Yeah,
I'm not going
start
to
taxing them.
Yes, no.
Oh,
no. But what I worry is that our next generation, next generation, it's hard for them to find a housing. So we should really do something about it.
Yeah.
When I came to Copenhagen, I was a poor single mom. All right. So
that's like my mom.
Yeah, no.
But she was from Asbjørn, not Thailand. So
no, I'm from Taiwan, not Thailand.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, Heidi, though, because it is. This is not just a Copenhagen issue. This is something that cities all around the world are dealing with a bit of a housing crisis to a certain degree. And in some ways, Copenhagen is not in such a hole as some other major cities and other capitals are.
There's one form of this housing thing is so wonderful. It's Danish. That is andelsbolig. I mean, people get together and build something, and then the profit is very small, but people are living there. It's a co-op sort of a thing, And I really totally, for that kind of model.
They're having a bit of a resurgence lately too,
Yes.
because that I think is something that people are missing.
Yes, exactly.
Wanted to kind of end with an idea from both of you, which is if you can maybe talk directly to any listener that may be thinking that their vote doesn't really matter, or maybe they're on the fence about even getting out to vote, especially if they are maybe a first-time eligible voter. Maybe they haven't been here too long, or they have a myriad of reasons why maybe they think they don't have a place in this election. Could you maybe give them some words to convince them otherwise?
Just by the mere principle that if you have a right to vote, you should always use it. We are so fortunate to live in a part of the world where we take it for granted to have a right to vote. I think we have seen plenty of examples from even here in Europe where people, they are demonstrating to actually obtain the right to vote. And we have it and we just take it for granted. So that's one, but that's a really paternalistic or go and vote. If you don't, then you're just a bad human. Not at all. You can have your reasons. I think to be more concrete, whatever you vote for, be it me or Heidi or Enhedslisten or someone else, as long as you have put thought into it, as long as you are considered when you do it, I think you should always vote for the person or the party that is someone or a party that you believe can actually change your everyday life to the better. Be it maybe come with some more private-only property, be it someone like me who really, really cares about the association life. We heard Joanne before talked about a lot of the public schools. If you have children in the public schools and you think, maybe they should be a bit more independent, like I said, go and vote for me then. If you disagree with that, well, vote for someone else. But just know that in Denmark, especially here in Copenhagen, your vote really matters. It can be something as little as where do you want the little slide up to the biking lane? That's also something that is decided by the municipality. Or will you be able to swim in the harbor freely, or only in the located areas? Those are decisions that impacts everyday life, and that's why it matters so much to actually go down and vote.
I think local election is the only election you can vote as a foreigners, or non-European foreigners. And I think if all the non-Danes exercise their democratic rights with the number of internationals, you can have a mayor. And I think it's also the fault of the parties. I remember how I got into politics. I was only in Denmark 14 years because somebody asked me, And I think, we may not be able to do that with this election. But I think we should, all the parties have an international division. Even though you don't speak Danish, but you can read, and a lot of people, even they don't speak perfect Danish, they know what's going on here. And people tend to vote for someone that reminds them themselves, right? So if we have international candidates, I think the internationals probably will vote, practice their rights. But so far, you only have me. So why don't you
That was a
consider
brilliant marketing campaign.
me?
Wonderful. Well, thank you both. And on that note, we will have all of your information where people can learn more about you and hear more about you in the show notes and description of this episode. So we will have that information for those who are looking for where to put their vote. And thank you both so much for your time and your insights, and hopefully inspiring some of our listeners to get out and vote in Copenhagen and beyond. Wishing you both luck in the election.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yes. And thanks everybody for listening and watching. Hi.